Hey everybody, this is Perch. Let's say, this is a question that came up. I've done a couple of videos talking kind of around this in different ways, but more and more I'm seeing people ask and be curious about what it takes to do an indie comic. And the reason being, I think COVID kind of shook a number of people up. Uh, I did an interview with the creators for Reburn, and that was a great one if you want to go check that out. But that was one of the things that they said in the midst of all this is that, through COVID, people are trapped at home. They're trying to figure out what to do. They're trying to grab some control. And I'm paraphrasing what they said. They didn't say the exact same things, but you're basically trying to get some control over your life. You're trying to do something at least that you can do all on your own without as this world is kind of shut down and very unstable. Um, so a lot of people see indie comics as an option, and the great part about it is this is where I'm going to be super, Pollyanna, optimistic, glass half full, whatever you want to call it, kind of guy. It is a golden age for making your own comic. It is easier than it's ever been before. I mentioned this in other videos. The biggest block is you. It's you being comfortable with the fact that you're going to screw some things up the first time around, especially if you've never done it before. You are going to mess it up. Everybody tends to get better, and case in point, and do this for your own good. Go check out Jim Lee, his art when he first started at Marvel. It was good. Not taking anything away from it, but it's dramatically better in just 3 years, in 5 years. He was almost a completely different person. Same thing true with Todd McFarlane. What he did, Infinity Inc. I think he did some issues of that. Look at early Todd McFarlane, and then go look at him on Spider-Man and then on Spawn. It's a massive jump in quality. Why did he get better? Well, because he kind of had to, because he was doing comics every month, because he was getting practice, because he was getting training. He would not have gotten better if he never published a thing, never worked on a single comic. His style would have stuck. You have to get out there and start. And so it is a golden age, I think, for indie creators because it is possible for you to make a comic cheap. You can make a comic for under $1,000 from start to finish. No, you're not going to get, Sean Murphy's not going to come and do a variant cover for you on that budget. You're not going to be able to get your book fully colored or maybe colored at all on that budget unless you're doing it yourself. You're going to use lettering. You're going to use fonts that maybe are not as professional as what a professional letterer would do. That's okay. Just get started. But the question that came up, and I think it's one that people are thinking about more and more, is it a destination, or is it a good play? Is it a good destination to work for Marvel or DC, to work for the big two? How important is that on the bucket list of your career? And the answer to that is, that's up to you. But one thing that is different in 2021 than was true in, say, 92 or 98 even, is you do not need to take a detour to work in Marvel or DC in order to be successful now. If you can do some work on the indie scene, whether it's through crowdfunding, whether it's through ultimately getting a book published through one of the smaller publishers, whatever it is, you can get a name for yourself. You can become a big deal without having to do a tour of duty at Marvel or DC. You do not need to take that detour anymore. So you do have to ask yourself very, very carefully, do you want to engage with Marvel or DC? Do you want to spend that time going through that? Because depending on who you are, and in particular, depending on your drive. Now, to be clear, particularly if you're an artist, one thing that Marvel or DC will teach you is some professionalism. It will teach you about deadlines. It will teach you about working with somebody, an editor. It will teach you about having to take orders. It will teach you things that you might not be getting on your own, depending on who you are. But I would argue if you're a successful indie creator, if you've run either successful campaigns, you do know what this is like. You know what it means to go out there and have to do a comic and put it through fulfillment and apologize when you mess up or whatever it happens to be. You've lived through those experiences. And so, again, Marvel or DC will definitely give you a bit of exposure. But it's questionable. I think what's the interesting way to look at it is in 2021, it's really questionable if that exposure is that valuable. Sure, it definitely is if you manage to get a job on, Justice League or the Avengers, and you do a couple issues there, and you're an amazing artist or writer, and you're able to, the company for whatever crazy reason decides to get behind you. But take a look at DC and Marvel right now, and look at how they're marketing their creators. They're very, very few. 1 out of 50 people is getting any kind of marketing love out of the big two. Most aren't. And to the point, I mean, Jeff Johns did this Stargirl issue. There was pretty much zero marketing for Jeff Johns. Al Ewing is one of Marvel's bigger writers, and he gets I mean, he'll get promoted when he's got a new book. He's going to go on to Venom, and he's going to get promoted there. But you know, he's wrapping up this Immortal Hulk run, a run that was very, very well received, critically acclaimed, pretty good seller. And he's got 2 issues left to go, and there is very little that they're doing for Ewing, and there is close to nothing that they're doing for Bennett. It's a debatable point right now if working for Marvel or DC will give you really any of the marketing and the promotion that is worth much. Certainly, it's not worth as much as it was, say, 15, 20 years ago, where making it into the big two actually mattered a little bit for kind of the longevity of your career. But today, running a successful campaign, being professional to work with, having a good screen presence, and not being a raving lunatic on social media or whatever it is, I mean, that stuff, you can market yourself in many ways way more successfully than the big two will market you. And so, given that, to kind of the original question, is it necessary to go there? And the answer is it's not, to be honest. I think the reason you'd want to wind up at the big two is, either number one, you do want that discipline, you want that experience of working with those companies and having those credits and being able to point to that of like, I've worked for DC. But I mean, I'll be honest, DC and Marvel have been publishing these anthologies, and there's tons of little like 4 to 8 page stories in there by up and coming new creators who never get more work at either of the big two. That's it. And they will stamp "I work for Marvel" on their their CV or their bio, and that's it. That's all they get out of that. I mean, quite bluntly, working on multiple comics, being able to deliver them in this crazy way, if you can claim that you did a crowdfunded book that funded and shipped and fulfilled successfully, that's weirdly maybe more powerful than big two credit. It sends the message that you were able to draw an audience, you had fans, you delivered on what you said you were going to deliver on. I mean, again, in the craziest way, that probably gets you farther than, say, doing a 4 page story in one of the anthologies that largely gets forgotten. So I don't think it's necessary. And again, unless you have some burning desire inside of yourself to, work on Spider-Man or work on Wolverine or basically get to work on a character that you grew up with. Maybe you love Black Widow, you love Wonder Woman, and you've always wanted to write stories or draw stories with Wonder Woman. At this point, it's a bit more of a passion project than actual a career helping project. The career aspect of it is, negligible. The being able to check something off your bucket list, I get that, but it's not necessary anymore. You can do just as well on your own, work in the indies, getting some things out, and frankly, most of the crowdfunded books and private indie books that I see do a ridiculously better job marketing than the big two, because in a lot of cases the big two will do 1 or 2 little marketing blips, and then they're done. They're moving on to one of their other 90 books that they're putting out that month. And, you know, you see campaigns run on the indie level, even people with like zero experience, where they're working social media, they're putting sketches up, they're doing interviews places. I mean, they're in the news, they're getting their name and their book and their project and their work on it out there every day. Whereas, with the big two, you may be thrilled that you have a check that has Marvel on it, but it's really not going to do much for you from a career standpoint. Anyway, what about you? Do you think that a stopover in Marvel or DC land is important to your career? Do you think that's something that comic creators need to focus on and pay attention to? Or does it matter anymore? I mean, have we moved past it? Is the indie market, the crowdfunding market, all that kind of stuff, has it become robust enough that, you know what, you're probably just better focusing on, you're better off just focusing on getting product out there, getting comics out in the hands of people, showing people what you could do. That's probably going to be a better use of your time. That, I think so. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comments below. Like and subscribe, of course, and thanks for listening.